Today we're going to start our time with a little warm-up. Can you find the vertex? Now, if you said D, you are absolutely correct. What do we know about this function? Well, we know it's a quadratic because the highest power of x is 2, and we know it's in standard form. But how do we find the vertex? Oh, we've done this before. You need this formula right here that is key to finding the x value of the vertex. And then you take that value, plug it into the original function everywhere you see x, and solve to get the y value of the vertex. And there you have it. Now that we're nice and warmed up, it's time to look at 2.07 quadratic regression models. So our goals with this are to determine a quadratic function equation to fit a data set. So today we're going to see data in tables and use regression to approximate a quadratic equation. So what is quadratic regression and why does it matter? Well, it's a way to model a relationship between two sets of variables x and y, which is any point, if you think about it, has an x and y value. But we're talking about specifically the relationship between the bits of data, like the dots you see on this graph. So what's happening here? Well, we're taking the data, plotting it on this graph, and then using those points to make predictions about the data. So you can clearly see that parabola line is following the general shape of those dots as closely as it can, but the dots are not right on the line, of course. So it gives us a general shape of a parabola, okay? And the primary purpose is to make predictions when we have data. So it's not exact, but it is still useful in the real world. Can you think of any examples where this might be useful? Finances is a big one. Maybe weather. And there are lots more examples you can look up, but those are just a few. Now, we're going to look at the 2.07 quiz together because this is done in such a way where we're going step by step through a tool, which will be the Desmos Graphing Calculator. So go ahead and open that up. And when you're ready, let's get started with number 1. Of course, this question isn't exactly the same as your quiz question, but it's so similar that it will definitely help. When we're looking at this, we want to start with a compare and contrast because they're asking us which quadratic equation in this white box fits the data in the red table. So let's kind of compare and contrast first the options for our answers. That'll really help narrow things down. What's the same? What's the same? Well, I would say they all have the highest power of x squared, so we know they're all quadratic. So right away, we know it could be quadratic that looks like this, or maybe something that looks more like that. What's the difference? Well, you hopefully remember this is a positive and this is a negative. But which positive and negative values are we looking at when we look at an equation to determine if it's positive or negative? Well, that's going to be the sign all the way in the front just after the equal sign. So that's negative. You don't see negative there, so we know it's positive, negative, positive. So maybe that's a good place to start. Let's go ahead and look at our table of values. As we look at the x values, we can visualize it's going from negative to positive, so we're going from left to right. Let me get that drawn out for you. So we're going from left to right, right? We know we're going in that direction, but where's this line actually going to look like? Well, that's all about the y values. So we know we're starting up high at 33, and then we're dropping down to 9 as we go from left to right, down to 5, down to -3, and then what happens? Well, it starts to climb back up, doesn't it? So we can see that this is going to be a positive quadratic, right? Forming a parabola that opens up. So right away, we can cross out some answer choices, can't we? We can cross out, let's see, we know it's positive, so A and C. Okay, so far so good. Now what's different about B and D? They both have everything the same except for the last value. And we've recently learned about that last value, right? What does that tell you? I'll give you a clue to jog your memory. It's what standard form parabolas specialize in. They specialize in finding the y-intercept. So is the y-intercept -3 or +3? Well, the y-intercepts also happen when x is 0, right? So if you look at your table, I see x as 0 when y is not negative, but +3. So the answer is going to be D. Numbers 2 and 3 are going to be very, very similar. And they're going to ask you which quadratic regression equation best fits the data set. So the very first thing you need to do right now is go to desmos.com/calculator. Now that you're there, we're going to follow these steps to get this question answered. The first thing you do is click that plus symbol in the top left corner. Next, click on table. That's going to open a blank table. And now is the time for you to look at the x and y values on your table from your question and put them into this table right here. Now we have our table with our values. So we need to go down and click on box 2. It's just below box 1 where you just made your table. And you're going to type this in. If you need help knowing exactly what to type, it's right here. And if you're wondering about this symbol on my keyboard and most keyboards, I believe it's above the tab key. So if you press shift and that button above the tab key, that will give you this little symbol, which means approximate, and then the rest. So we're typing all of this in, and it should appear as you see it here. And after you do that, something really nice is going to happen. Desmos graphing calculator already is going to calculate these parameters, A, B, and C. And you know where those go, don't you? Right? Here, here, and here. So that's what you do. You take those values and you write them into your quadratic equation. So the answer for my quadratic regression equation, based on the values that I put in, looks like this. Notice what's going on here. I thought there was a squiggly line. Now there's this kind of arrow above the y and an equal sign. Well, both of these mean the same thing. Okay, so no matter how it looks, you will know what it means. They mean approximate. Numbers 4 and 5 will also be pretty similar to each other. These are word problems. Okay, so we're going to practice one together to get you prepared. And it's actually a lot simpler than you might think. We have an equation. Looks similar to the values we just saw, right? Because there's decimals. And we're told this models the amount y of sugar produced. So when you solve for y, it will tell you how much sugar is produced in pounds per square foot, where x is the amount of fertilizer used. Okay, so x is the fertilizer, y is the sugar in pounds per square foot. And they want to know what the best approximate for the amount of sugar produced when 3 pounds per square foot of fertilizer is used. So think about it carefully. They want the best approximate value for sugar when there's 3 pounds of fertilizer. I think you might have a good idea on how to solve this. You substitute 3 for x and solve, and that's it. Okay? Of course, you would work this out all the way to get a more exact number. And you would definitely want your calculator because there are a lot of decimals. And that is actually it for today. Those are quadratic regression models. Hope you learned something, and I'll see you next time.